everybody. It's me, Johnny, and with me, I've got DJD and Farmer.
Howdy.
How's it going?
And sitting in the back, we've got not only our sound engineer, but also security for the set, Craig. What's up, Craig? Craig, I don't think I've ever asked you, but what color are your eyes?
I think for a second I almost heard. I think I almost heard him. I think I did.
I don't know what you're talking about because I did hear him.
Wow. I didn't. And usually I'm the one who hears voices.
So for people listening, do you guys think that Craig just doesn't have a microphone? Is he a program, or is he an illithid that communicates via telepathy to the people he wants to communicate to?
And only certain people can hear his voice.
Maybe. I'm just saying. I really went crazy playing Baldur's Gate at the beginning of the year, Baldur's Gate 3. I haven't gone back to it so much. I'm like, I don't know, 3/4 of the way finished with my second playthrough. I should go back to it because David and I actually have a playthrough together. And on that playthrough, I am a halfling bard. Let's go. And that's what I want to experience. My other playthrough is a dragonborn druid, which is fun, but he ain't no halfling.
That's a game I need to get back to. It's been a long time.
Well, and speaking of getting back to games, so I bought a Steam Deck a few months ago now. I bought a handful of games that I could not play on Xbox and I didn't have a PlayStation, right? Bought them on Steam. I bought Final Fantasy VII Remake, I bought God of War, and I bought Horizon Zero Dawn. Just right off the bat. It's interesting because I decided the first one of them I would play would be God of War. And to be honest, I've just not been playing it. Not been playing God of War. I was spending all my time playing like Helldivers. I got back into Apex. I was playing a lot of Cult of Lamb. And I would try and get into God of War. I'd like load it up and play for like an hour or so. And it's just, I don't know, I wasn't getting into it. I kind of regret buying it, to be honest, a little bit. Farm, I don't know if I brought this up to you. I was telling David, I almost feel like I would have enjoyed watching someone stream it more than playing it myself.
Yeah, it's one of those titles that you either really fall in, deep and really like it, or it could miss the mark, honestly, just for you. Just depending on, it could just be where you are that week or that year, honestly. I think there's a lot to that game, but if you're not feeling it, you should probably stop, at that point.
So far, story-wise, it's not really moving me. Okay, his wife died, you're trying to get rid of her ashes, bring it up to the top of the mountain or whatever. And then I finally got there. Guess what? It's not the tallest mountain in all the realms. We got to go to a different mountain now. And that's when I was just like, I'm done.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that irking you a little bit. It's like, oh, no, not one of those rippling effects, that it's like, oh, it just continues and continues.
When you work hard to get somewhere and then they're just like, nope, I'm not a fan of that. There was this game on the 360 called Prototype. Do you remember this game?
Yes.
Farmer?
I've never played it, to be honest. It's crazy. But
in a lot of ways, a good game.
I don't even remember the game. I don't remember anything about this game. But what I do remember about it is I worked really hard to unlock all of the powers. And then halfway through the game, they take all your powers away.
That's like any new sequel to any other game. That when they come out, they're like, okay, guess what? You got to learn the mechanics over. So we're going to take you down to ground zero, and then you'll slowly get them back again. Isn't that great?
I hate that.
Now they do only do it for the one mission.
They took all your powers and then they put you into this really hard fight. Where it's like, it would be nice, all of the powers that I worked really hard to get. They took all of your powers, they put you in this really hard fight, and I never finished the game from there. I just stopped playing. I was like, no, I'm done.
Once you beat that fight, though, you get your powers back. It's great.
But also, I worked so hard to I unlocked I fully upgraded, right? It's like an open world game. I fully did it, and they just took it. Anyway, I got to the top of that mountain. And some dude was like, oh, yeah, this is not the tallest mountain in the realms, guys. And it's just like freaking whatever. I'm done. So I started Final Fantasy VII Remake. For reference, Final Fantasy was my favorite game series in my teen years. I really loved it. But I didn't love 12. I didn't love 13, and I didn't even finish 15. I didn't really like it. And so playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, it's just on PlayStation. I was just kind of checked out of the series, right? I'm done. And to be honest, I kind of hate how much I'm enjoying Final Fantasy VII Remake. What a great game. I know I'm so late to the party here because I'm like an Xbox gamer, but what a great game. The game mechanics are great in how they are still honoring the original style, but also very modern. The visuals look great. Oh man, it's so good. For reference, in the last 3 days, I've put in this more time than I've put in the last 3 months of God of War. So it turns out that, it wasn't me. It was God of War. And I think that should be the title of this episode is God of War Sucks.
I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily that, but I think there's a certain point where if the game is not doing anything for you, and if you are through those sequences, if you're dragging and you're almost falling asleep, I think it's at that point you need to reassess your game that you're playing. It might just be you need to play it some other time, or never.
That's
ever.
very true.
Never ever again. Who knows?
I really wanted to like God of War. I really liked seeing a little bit of the streaming I saw of it. I really this is why I didn't give up on it as quickly as I gave up on Starfield. I actually think I may have put more game time, or no, about the same. I think I put about 6 hours into God of War, and I put about 6 hours in to Starfield. Starfield, I did those 6 hours in the course of a week, right? Versus months.
Mm-hmm.
And man,
Starfield's good now.
Now that's what I've heard.
Starfield's always been good. Okay, let's rectify that statement.
Yeah.
I also re-got Cyberpunk.
Quick Starfield thing. I did. So I was installing a bunch of mods, right? And I was like, okay, great, I can play with these mods on. But most of those mods advise, hey, this is going to change a bunch of stuff, so go ahead and start a new save. So I did, and I deleted my 40-hour save.
No,
my God.
No.
No.
There's no point of recovery, is there?
No. Yeah.
That is.
I didn't realize
gone?
it. So
that sounds like a Johnny problem right there with his whole hard drive and everything. It's what'd you do? Did you touch him or something? He's a transfer.
So I saw load save, right? And you being able to pick your save and everything. And I'm like, okay, great. So obviously it supports multiple save files, but it only supports one gameplay save file or whatever, and then multiple saves throughout that game. So I got to start from scratch, which is fine. But I mean, also yeah, kind of sucks.
That reminds me of the time that my 360 hard drive failed after hours and hours of Assassin's Creed stuff. I was had the 2 achievements left in that game, and I was been grinding and getting all those flags. I don't know if you remember it from the first one, the Assassin's Creed, where you had to get all those flags, not let alone getting all the the high points and getting all the do your eagle vision and all that, but then going to every city and finding all these special hidden flags. And I had 2 left. Hard drive crashed, lost all my games, not just that one, but I remember that one most, sinking most of the time into that, and then I just lost it all. Ah, man, it was so frustrating.
It reminds me of me backing up 5 years worth of my, music project files and everything onto a brand new hard drive, and it's just getting corrupted and losing all of the data.
Rough. It's rough. Data loss is never the answer. I mean, it's never great.
Well, that was the other thing, by the way, with God of War. God of War, also, there's this known problem with the Steam Decks in the God of War game that it just crashes your Steam Deck hard. You have to restart it. And it just kind of randomly happens every few hours. So I haven't had that problem with Final Fantasy VII Remake. And again, so far, fantastic. I've been playing it a lot. I've put in 8 hours already, just in a few days. It makes me almost want to go back and play a couple other Final Fantasy games. I don't know. You guys, I know this is a huge change of heart, but I'm maybe I would like Kingdom Hearts again.
Right?
Hey,
you know what we could do, Johnny? We could dive into Final Fantasy 14 together.
I don't know that I want to get into 14. Farm, I see you talking. I see your mouth moving. Hold on. It's the visual bit.
I just like to do that sometimes just to see what's going on. But,
okay. Oh no, are you talking to someone else? Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
No, I was actually saying stuff. I forgot I muted myself. That happens. Does anybody else have that problem? You hit the button and then you realize that you're talking
all the time,
and then people don't hear you, and then you keep talking and then they just talk over you. Yeah, that's
interesting because back in the day, I feel like if you do push to talk, it's not so bad because you have to push it to talk, right?
Yeah,
I think Tuna had like a pedal that he uses to do that. That sounds pretty sweet to me, to have like a pedal that you like hold down.
It's a good idea, it really is.
Yeah, if anyone wants to gift that to me, you let me know.
They're not that bad really. If you look on Amazon, anybody could gift it to them. It's not that bad at all.
And Prime Day is coming up.
Exactly. Like we got 2-3 days until it hits.
But are you guys ready to dive into this can of worms?
Well, we were talking about Final Fantasy, and I was just going to say that my first Final Fantasy was actually 13. Final Fantasy 13 was the first
with lightning.
Ever. Yeah, and I actually enjoyed it. I've never played anything like that before that. The story was okay, but I think the gameplay was really what got it for me. At first, I was like, man, this is just so different because I always play like shooters or something like that. And then I go into that game and I'm like, man, I don't know if I can get into this. And as I played it, the more I played it, the more I liked it. And it was kind of like addicting. Like it just like, oh man, I'm getting into this. This is really great.
That's funny because one of the things I didn't like so much about it was you couldn't control the other characters. And so this is something that you can do in Remake. They can kind of do their thing on their own, but you can tell them to do specific stuff. I didn't love that in 13. And I know there was like 13 too. I never played it. I don't know if they fixed that. But that was one of the things that I found really annoying. Was I was like, how come they won't let me like take control of this character and heal this other character? Kind of a deal.
So are you more a fan of the way that Dragon Age Inquisition does it, or the way that it looks like Dragon Age the Veilguard will handle it? Because it seems like the Veilguard will be more like Mass Effect, where you can tell your characters to do stuff, but you can't control them directly. That's what it looks like.
That would be fine as long as you can tell them what to do.
Sure.
The big one that's the big one for me. So like for me, I usually don't like to play as the healer, but I like to be able to tell the healer to heal a specific person. Right?
That's kind of where I land too.
So like for example, I just finished playing. Cloud has way more health than Barrett. Well, not way more, but Cloud has more health than Barrett and Tifa in my playthrough. And Tifa currently is my healer right now. For Tifa, prioritizing healing herself and healing Barrett over healing Cloud, who I have is like the primary like tanky character. Like, oh, Cloud's health is low, but he'll be fine. Like heal yourself first and then heal him, kind of a deal. Which I don't really remember. It's been a long time since I played 13, but if I remember correctly, there were like roles in 13 and like you would like switch between them and then they would just kind of do their thing. I'm not sure if that's totally right, but something like that, I feel like.
I remember what I hated about 15 was not the story, which I thought was fine, not the setting or the characters, which I also thought were fine, but the way that combat was handled, where it was like queued up, but it looked like it was like instant. Like that really got to me. I really didn't like that. So like you could chain all these attacks together and that's cool and all, but like you would still need to finish like the actual action of the attack before it moves to the next one. And so it wasn't like you could like interrupt yourself or like switch in like mid attack to something else. So it definitely always felt delayed when you were like chaining stuff together. And I didn't love that.
I played a little bit of 15 and it was it was just a little different for sure. It wasn't quite what I expected, when I got into
fun.
it.
That's all. It just wasn't fun. You can say it.
I just never went back to it, so let that be the answer right there.
Same. And I wonder if now it would be better, right? I felt that way with Mass Effect Andromeda. I played it and then I ended up quitting because I had this glitch back when it was super glitchy, and then they fixed it and I went back to it years later. I think like 3 years
later. That's so crazy because
I loved it.
I had a little bit of the issues where they were talking about like, oh, it's a little blurry and here and that. But I mean, outside of that, like I didn't really pay attention to it. It really enjoyed the game, and I hated that there was so much flack about it. Honestly,
I had an issue, I think 8 hours in, where I was supposed to save this guy and for the main story, and he got stuck on something. And so after the battle finished, he couldn't get down. And I didn't have a save point that I could go back to, you know, one of those kind of situations where like, oh, if you just load to before it and try it again. But I didn't have that option. And so he was literally just like standing on this thing and he couldn't come down. And that was my game breaking glitch. There was nothing I could do or something along those lines. I don't know. But I went back to it and I loved it. So maybe now I'll enjoy Final Fantasy 15 if I go back to it. I don't know. Maybe I'll go back to God of War one day and enjoy it. But before we get too far from it, I tried earlier. You guys ready to jump into this can of worms that David's going to open up for us?
That I'm going to open up.
Let's go.
David's going to open up.
I'm ready to hear what he has to say.
Because I've been talking a lot. Go ahead, D. We're currently recording this at what time in America?
It's like 12:20 a.m. on the 14th of July Eastern time. So that would make it 11:20 p.m. Standard Central time. Yeah.
Yep.
Did anything happen on July 13th that would be interesting that people would know about?
There was an assassination attempt on former President Trump at a campaign rally, which is pretty wild. I don't know that I've actively seen anything quite like that, at least a live broadcast, right? And that's different than just reading about it for sure.
Oh yeah.
And then it's been causing a lot of emotions for sure, and obviously is a very terrible thing.
I didn't realize that it was happening when I was reading about it, like that it had just happened. You know, right. Because I'm so used to waking up here in Japan and I read about what happened in America yesterday.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So when I read that headline, I didn't really think that much about it. I was just kind of like, oh, wow, crazy. But then it continued developing. I'm like, oh, it's happening now. And I started getting messages from people in the States telling me about it. D, do you want to say anything about it on behalf of Anav?
I don't think that any of us are really Trump supporters necessarily. I think that Johnny and I are pretty anti-Trump when it comes down to it. But I don't think that political violence is ever condonable or okay. And I think that any attempt to assassinate not just a candidate running for office, but also democracy, essentially, is also pretty antithetical to the entire system of government that we live under here in the United States. And I'm pretty upset about that as well. But yeah, obviously, Anav doesn't condone violence.
Well, and even to go further with that is the fact that, okay, so this attempt was made, but you ended up actually killing somebody else. And
right. That's true too. Yes.
That is terrible. And wounding two others. And that's just, not okay.
I think no matter Trump could be the worst person on earth or whatever, but until he's actually it's such an interesting philosophical question of when do the ends justify the means, and I think never is my personal stance on that. It's just such a stiff attitude to take. Not to get too fictional with it, but
and that's why this hopefully laws are in place so that they can be enacted upon, but nobody's actually above the law.
Right? Exactly. Yeah.
I spent a while. So it is Sunday here. I did my bi-weekly trip to the dump with my son, and we were talking about it in the car. And I brought up to him, I was like, just because I don't like him doesn't mean I want him dead. You cannot like someone and not want to kill them, right? And it's not right to do something like that. Full disclosure to those listening, we talked about this a little bit before we started. One of the things that I find really interesting, and I wanted to tie it in with this current event of a presidential assassination attempt, was that it's really interesting Because replaying Final Fantasy VII, you're a mercenary who's hired by an eco-terrorist group. And literally the first mission is you're blowing up a reactor in a big city. And you're the good guys. I don't know. Now as an adult, it's more clearly nuanced, but still, there's this huge corporation and there's this small group of people. And, you know, Final Fantasy VII getting remade and all of that, it's one of the most popular Final Fantasy games. But it's a really political thing. Like the whole storyline of the game, it's pretty political. And so the original game came out, I think in 1997. Let's check that out. Maybe 99. Look at that, 97. Let's look at the American release date. The US release date was, 97. Perfect. It's a pretty political thing. And so obviously it's not new, but I wonder, you know, you get into certain areas and in certain media and you see these like extreme things, right? Like how would you feel locally if it's one thing? Well, I mean, how do you feel about, what is it? Don't stop oil. No, stop oil. Just stop oil. Don't stop oil.
Just stop oil.
Don't stop oil. It's the opposite group. Just stop oil. You know, they're like trying to vandalize paintings or like vandalizing Stonehenge and stuff like that. Right. And that draws a reaction. But like, how would you feel if someone blew up the power plant nearby where you live and you're all out of power because they're like, we need to be using renewable energy. We need to just get rid of this power plant. We all need to be on solar and wind power. And someone like actually blew it up. Right. And I bring that up not to give anyone ideas, but because that's what the game is doing. Right. That's what the first mission of the game was. Of course, there's more to it as it keeps going and such. But I don't know. What do you guys think about that? About just like things getting more charged and, I don't know, radical? I don't know if that's right. I grew up in a like conservative Christian family, you know, so the word radical is usually like a positive thing. Be like, yeah, I'm radical, you know?
There's a phrase that's taken on a lot of like life over the past, like I would say like 5 to 10 years, and really appealed to a lot of like Gen Z and like maybe even like Gen A and all that, of like and this, I think, oh gosh, I should look this up actually. But the phrase is
YOLO. I'm sorry.
YOLO.
There's no wrong actions. There's just wrong targets or something like that.
Oh my God. What?
Yeah. No bad tactics, only bad targets. And I ardently disagree with that. I like absolutely disagree with that wholeheartedly with every fiber of my being. I mean, one of the things that like is fundamental to my core belief system is the idea that like methods matter, that procedures matter, that essentially if you condone something being used against your enemies or people you don't like, then you're condoning its usage at large. I don't know, like just as people tend to like, as culture kind of just seems to really thrive on, well, you know what, like ultimately the consequences, like the outcomes that we're looking for are good and our intent is good. So it doesn't matter about like how you get from A to C. Like, I just absolutely disagree with that. And I think like that only works if like that never works really, because then ultimately anyone can use that to justify anything, because everyone thinks that they're like doing things for the right reasons. Right. Like, I mean,
and then you have to get the, you know, the Spartan, you know, program to bring in and, you know, control the whole insurrectionist thing, you know, because that's exactly this whole same thing that they dealt with. And they went to an extreme level to control it. You know, it's kind of bizarre, like how far they went, you know. And it ended up working for them, you know, in this fictional storyline. But I mean, the same thing can be applied to like what's happened in the past and what it can happen in the future, you know?
Well, and like you could even take it and apply it to, I mean, our favorite, like one of our favorite, like universes of Star Wars, right? Like, isn't that the whole justification for the Galactic Empire? Aren't most people under the Galactic Empire technically probably living more stable lives, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But like the methods to get there obviously were like not okay, right? They were morally wrong. And that's essentially what makes the Galactic Empire evil, is the methods that they used, not necessarily just the outcomes, even though the outcomes are discriminatory and do mean like a negative outcomes for like a smaller group of people, but like also that the actions were morally wrong, right? And
right, it was kind of making it made it to where it's more like a ticking time bomb for those who had more stability. They may have had more more things at that point, but I felt like most of them felt like they were under, control. They definitely were. They were like suppressed a little bit from like who they could have actually been, or actually things that they might have had less, but maybe they would have actually had a little bit more freedom. But the Galactic Empire, you never know when you'd send like Darth Vader or like Moff Tarkin or whatever, to blow up your planet, if you weren't compliant or whatever, so it's like, do you really want to be part of that empire that's going to be like, you never know when your time's going to come?
And when it comes down to it, that's exactly what I come back to, is I don't want to live in a world. I don't want to live in a society that thinks that, hey, guess what? We don't like this person, so them getting assassinated is okay. Like, that's not the place that I want to live in, Like, that's not the rules by which I want to, like, be part of a society. I mean, like, we saw just in, what was it? I think Mexico had, like, multiple candidates and elected officials like murdered during this last like election season for them.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy.
Yeah, like that's not a place that like I want this country to become, And I think ultimately, like, the problem is too that this was a hypothetical like 4 hours ago, right? This was absolutely like a thought exercise of like, this is like one of the worst things that could potentially happen is murder, right? Ultimately, like when we're really talking about like outcomes and methods and stuff, we're talking more like moderate things, like policies that like may seem like immoral, but might result in like, positive outcomes for the people that they affect. Or like the judicial system with the way that it works, or like having police as opposed to not having police, that kind of thing. But like now we're talking like literally like killing like someone who's running for like the actual like leader of the most powerful country in the world. That's like a scary thing. That absolutely is.
Yeah. And all of that to say, I think if anyone listening is going to take away anything, despite disagreeing with people, to try to take someone's life is a very serious thing. And I think something, because you can be like, well, what about this? What about this? There's a lot to talk about there, but it is very serious. And trying to assassinate a presidential candidate because you disagree with them is not right. And people who would say that like, oh, so like, well, what about this? What about this that he did? What about this that he did? It's still not right to try to kill him just because he's running for president. It's ridiculous.
I mean, on just even like a personal moral level, it's wrong, right? Trying to take someone's life and all that. But also like on a, like if you appreciate freedom, right? There's no way that you can condone like something like this, which is like literally trying to take that freedom away. Like this is the kind of thing that ruins a system like this, because democracy only works when everyone wants it, right? Like the second that like a sizable, like significant portion of the people who live in this society decide that they don't want that system anymore, that system will go away. And like, it scares me how quickly we seem to be approaching that on like certain fringes, because those fringes just seem to be getting bigger and bigger. And, it seems like it's only online, but obviously not just online, I mean, obviously, a decent amount of that is bleeding over into real life, too. And obviously, it's one of those things where one of my most appreciated examples of like crime, right, is like you take like 100,000 people spread across like a state or whatever, and you measure the crime there, and you don't see a lot in like square mileage, right? But you push them all into a city and you see that crime rate spike up. And then that's not even accounting for like all the other factors that could potentially influence that crime, like, seeing other people commit crimes and potentially get away with it or whatever, like, or the additional tension of living in such a small area with so many other people and everything. Like, I mean, like, there's all that kind of stuff. Like, I think the same, like, kind of holds true for, like, essentially deciding what kind of society we want to live in, where, like, the more common, like, certain acts become or certain behaviors become, the more, like, condoned they become as well, at least implicitly, if not directly. And it's been, on one hand, it's been really nice seeing a lot of people who hate Trump with every fiber of their beings, like, say, well, you know what, this is not okay. This is not the society I want to live in. And it's been really great to see that. But I mean, like, it's also concerning the number of people who are like, you know what, I mean, like.
Yeah. I think for me, the part that I'm concerned with, like we talked about, is even representative in this game that I'm playing of this. You've been talking about it for quite some time now, of just like, this ends justifies the means. I can do whatever. I believe in this. And I don't know, it's just too. I grew up in Chicago, and like, I think about doing stuff just because you can, right?
Right.
And even if you have good reasons, it doesn't make it right.
Right.
I think it's interesting also on these games. I think a lot of times, like, either games or movies or any form of media, they want to paint that there's it's all kind of black and white, and there is just like straight up, you're the good guy. These actions are perfectly right because you are the hero.
Right.
These are okay because you're the hero, and a lot of those things just aren't true at all in real life at all. And you can't just look at it black and white.
Well, and I think that's like kind of like the allure of these games or whatever is the universes in which they are. You're placed in a situation so extreme that, like, that actually is somewhat like, this is all you can do. You have to fight back or whatever. You have to be the resistance.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be the rebellion. But like, then people try to, like, analogously one-on-one, like, place that over real life and go, like, see, this is this and this is this, and this means that we're okay to do this. And it's like, wait a second, you don't live in a place like that. Like, with all your complaints of, like, America's, like, political actions or its foreign, like, policies or whatever, or like the way that, like, we obviously still have fundamental problems with our society that need, like, reform or, like, reparation or some kind of, like, adjustment, right, to make it better. Like, we don't live in a society where, like, these extreme actions are at all justified, because we have other ways of dealing with these problems that usually work. That's a frustration of mine, is seeing, like, people, like, take these extreme ideologies and applying them to a situation that doesn't at all merit them,
And it kind of go back to what we kind of talked about, last couple weeks, about, like, certain fandoms. When you get so tied in and almost like blindsided to something that you are so passionate about, that you, like, totally sink in and you lose a little sight of reality. And we've talked about this with Star Wars fandoms, and just how that people go crazy about it. And sometimes it could be merited, but most of the time it is just they're over the top and they're not being realistic about it. They're just wanting their way, no matter how they get it, no matter what they have to go and do, and they'll say whatever and do whatever to get their way. Their way of the highway, so to speak.
D, just to get us a little bit off this topic, I think you said you wanted to say something about Star Wars too. Is that true?
I mean, yeah, I kind of going along with the fandom thing, I guess. Sure, a little bit. But I mean, I don't know. We could get into that a little bit as a palate cleanser a little bit or something.
Yeah, a little bit, because I feel like we're basically done on this, of that. Yeah. Like, there was an assassination attempt on a former president currently campaigning for president, and we all have feelings about it, that it's, at least out of this group, that it's not right. And there are people who probably would disagree with us, but in the end, I liked what David said. I'll reword it a little bit. That's not the world I want to live in, where that's okay. where if you don't like your political opponent, you can kill them. I don't want to live in that world.
Oh man, like every single time that I think about like the kind of world, like to create a society that you want to live in, or to impact it in, like bringing it in that direction, you have to have a vision for it, right? And I mean, like ultimately, like I'm always brought back to that Silver Chair reference by C.S. Lewis, where like this like little guy's being tortured or whatever and told that everything that he knows isn't real. And when his response is, you know what? I choose to believe in that because I want it to be real. You know, like that a world without that isn't the world that I want to live in. And so like, what does it say about the world that you're building that it's worse than the one that I believe in? You know? And I think that like ultimately that's the like best expression of hope that any of us can have for like moving into a better time, a better place, a better like people, really, when it comes down to it, is like actually believing that we can make the world better. We just have to try, you know?
And on that note, Star Wars fans, am I right?
We're back again.
Star Wars fans just need to try. I mean, I don't know. I've been really frustrated with the whole like acolyte treatment. Especially with like the number of people like trying to like use that to justify their opinions of it when like their arguments are utter nonsense. And so I have a question for you guys. While we're talking about like not everything is black and white, what is one action, not just like an attitude, but like an actual action, a mass action that the Jedi do that you think would be like pretty easily criticized?
Well, I feel like it's a little baity, but don't people say that like them taking kids to train to be Jedi is pretty easily like that's what people like to criticize. They shouldn't be taking kids, right?
I mean, yeah, that's essentially it. That's the first thing that comes to my mind as well.
That's the one that comes to my mind.
Yeah,
I guess that there's this. Well, hold on. So like my understanding of the Jedi have also changed, right?
Sure.
So the Jedi, from what I understand now, they are an order outside of government of space wizards with space wizard powers. And they have a very narrow view of how these powers should be used and what they should be used for. And the way that they replenish their numbers is that they find children and they separate them from their families and indoctrinate them from very young to grow up to be Jedi, right? Sounds pretty culty, gonna be honest.
It does, especially framed that way. Yeah.
But that's not how I thought of Jedi when I was young. Right. Yeah. That's not how you thought about it at all. You were like, you thought about Jedi like Harry Potter, right? You're just like waiting for your letter.
You got to go back to the way you were introduced. Like there are like hardly any Jedi. You're Luke, you're the first person you watch is Luke Skywalker coming into this like, oh, there's this order that before, the Empire, there was, all these Jedi, and what is a Jedi? And everybody's wanting to be a Jedi. Luke's trying to figure out what a Jedi is, and he's trying to be a Jedi. And so it's just like, it's almost like this thought, this imagination of what it could be. And Luke's, getting there, and he's slowly, ramping up to getting to be a Jedi once we get, to the last movie. And it's just an epic tale. And it must be, it's got to be something that's all great because, the movie showed it that way. But when you get into it, there's a lot more to it than just that.
I just got a message from Pyro saying Hogwarts doesn't teach you to hate Muggles. Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
How did she hear that? Do. She's not in here. What the heck?
What in the world? Cheeto must have said something.
But so one of the things too, like I always viewed the Jedi as kind of like Professor Xavier's school, right? Where like you're finding like people like with great power who don't know how to use it or whatever, or at least the potential for great power, who if they are left untrained and they do begin to use that power, they could cause tons of havoc, right? Like have negative impacts across everything that comes across their path. And so it's almost the responsibility of this cult to like, you know, like try to like train these people and like make sure that they don't cause that havoc. But some of the methods that they use obviously are not the greatest, you know, like taking them at such a young age when they're so impressionable. Sure, it makes it easier to train and like easier to control, but like also that doesn't sound great, you know. I mean, like,
well, it doesn't. It makes him a better Jedi, but does it make them a better person? And I would say no, honestly.
The Jedi, like Microsoft, need new PR people. They're like, listen, do we need to take them at 3? Really? Do we need this?
Well, and we see from so many other different stories in the canon that obviously you don't, because there's several. There's more than just one that start a little bit later. So it's possible, people. You just need the right narrative.
But to not spoil too much, but to spoil a tiny bit of Acolyte, essentially, a girl is taken from her family at a very young age, right? And brought up to be a Jedi, and then essentially there's feelings about that or whatever. But in this particular latest episode, they kind of show that happening, like the Jedi taking her away and stuff. And the main criticisms of this episode, there's 2 main criticisms. I love them both because, so I have an employee at work who always feeds me all these latest criticisms because they're super anti-woke, Star Wars is too woke now. I hate Disney, Star Wars, etc. And so I love getting this information because it's always kind of an adventure in how much they're going to stretch to try to justify not liking something, right? And sometimes there's legitimate criticisms, but more often than not, these criticisms are completely unfounded. Like one of the episodes, they criticized space fire or whatever, and it's
that's always been in Star Wars.
Yeah, ships have been catching on fire literally the entirety of Star Wars. I don't know.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about that one. It's okay, why did you choose that? Why did you choose that particular one?
I mean, well, and it's just when somebody doesn't like something, they start searching for reasons to try to justify that dislike, right? As opposed to just being able to settle for not liking it. And we talked about that a couple episodes ago. But essentially, the 2 complaints of this episode were the Jedi separating the kid from her family, which is wait a second, that's a main thing that Jedi do. Like it or hate it. That's been a part of what Jedi do in terms of increasing their ranks and finding new younglings and training them. Literally since the beginning of the Jedi Order.
It's literally the only way that they can do it, because guess what? You can't have relationships.
Right. Yeah. You can't have attachment. Attachment literally is forbidden. So they have to be young when they're separated and all that. Yeah.
How you fix this problem? You just nix that whole rule of attachment, right? Right? Let's go. I want to see that age. The age of Jedi like that.
I could see where they're going with it. Of emotions are pretty volatile things, especially for younger people who don't necessarily have as much control over them. And those emotions could influence the way that you take action. And when you have so much power, taking action based on emotion is probably not gonna yield good outcomes, right? So I kind of get what they're going for. And hey, they were right about Anakin a little bit, but
a little bit,
yeah,
a little bit.
Hey, but he saved the galaxy, so we're good. We're good.
But yeah, so
true.
so
ends justify the means.
Hold on. In Return of the Jedi, it was Darth Vader, Anakin, who killed the Emperor, and it turns out he wasn't actually dead. It turns out he was still alive the whole time.
Yeah, so all his actions.
Skywalker.
So did he never kill the Emperor then? We
just ruined Anakin's whole arc.
His whole arc.
Oh my god!
But it was another Skywalker that did it, because Rey is a Skywalker now. Okay.
Now she is.
Yeah.
Is this episode 9? Is this episode 9? Did I mess up?
No, it's not. No, this is 7, unfortunately. We have 2 more episodes before 9.
2 more. Okay.
Yeah. We need Peach on 9, though.
We can really dig into force healing on 9. Okay, I'm just saying.
Oh gosh, let's go. But yeah, so the Jedi kidnapping and Jedi aren't evil. Like why? Like Disney is just making Jedi appear to be evil. Like thing is like a huge complaint for this latest episode. And then also the other main complaint is that the end credits have a hip hop song playing as like the end credits go. And like they're like, oh, this is so anti-Star Wars. Like this is stupid. They're ruining everything. And it's like, hey, Cantina wasn't even credits, and Cantina had some like swing jazz going on. Okay, that wasn't just like orchestral,
Is
John Williams score.
Is hip hop not Star Wars? I'm kind of confused.
Apparently not. Apparently, there's no hip hop in the Star Wars universe at all.
Oh wow, you heard it here first. It here first, everyone. There is zero hip hop in the Star Wars universe.
I can't wait. I want them to go. Now I actually want them to go crazy, right? I want like a planet solely devoted to hip hop now in Star Wars. That's what I want.
Well, why can't it be like, hip hop with, a little bit like Daft Punky, like that would be perfect.
So it's an end credits song. Like, I mean, like it's not even during the actual thing. Like, and it fit the mood, the theme that they were trying to convey. Like, oh my gosh, I just can't handle.
They had some really good background music in the Ahsoka, and it was like cello and stuff. Like, well, how does that fit any better?
Yeah.
Cellos exist in Star Wars. That's how that works.
Well, I'm just saying, it's like, how can they, pick and choose? How can you pick and choose one or not the other? It's like they either all exist or they don't exist, in my opinion. But I would say there's one other thing about Jedi, though, that that
from a certain point of view, the Jedi are evil. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say that they tend to be so passive in so many ways.
Sure.
Like the whole we got to go through the whole right. It's just like it doesn't make sense, because about things that they want to be passive, they are so passive, and you can't shake them. You can't move them. But then the things that they want to do, or the things that they believe in, they may go way too far or over the top, and then they make mistakes.
And I understand the no attachment thing is so that like they can't be threatened, or so that like, you know what I mean? Like they can't like, oh, I'm going to hurt your family, or I'm going to hurt the person you love, or, you're going to do what you can to stop it. And that's not the Jedi way.
It's a level of fear, honestly, isn't it?
It's a level of fear. It's also a level of like no distractions, right? You are going to be fully dedicated to this cause because you won't have other things trying to pull you away.
What do the Jedi even do when they're not generals? They do nothing. They sit around and they don't tell it. You know what they do is they steal kids. That's what they do. They go around and they be stealing space children because they're not ending slavery on Tatooine. That's what they're not doing.
Yeah,
Let me tell you what they're not doing.
They're just letting all that just, go.
You know what they are doing? They're gambling on pod racing. What they're doing. Everything I said is canon, by the way, is in Star Wars canon. Jedi are not freeing slaves. They're sitting around. They're stealing kids and they're gambling. This is all technically true.
It's technically in there for sure. One of the things that kills me about the whole, again, the whole not doing the attachment and all that stuff. Like, how many people like can be laser focused and still have these other things that going on? I feel like separating yourself out like they have done is actually making them less of Jedi. And I think especially like from the extended universe, like going into some of the later books, the Legacy edition, the Legacy Star Wars, like when peak Star Wars to me is Luke Skywalker, Mara Jade, all that, where they're actually, his, I just love his, approach to it, but maybe it wasn't perfect, but but I just feel like that seems better in my opinion. That's the Jedi I tribute or want to be. That's the one I think of whenever I think of Jedi Academy or whatever.
I'm trying to think of now. Why did he try to kill Ben? Did he have a bad dream or something, and that's why he tried to kill him or something like that? Do you guys remember? It's in the movie.
He had like a vision, and he felt like the dark side rising up or something, and so yeah.
So he tried to kill him, freaking.
But again,
didn't work.
We've talked.
That's like full circle right there. You know, he just
yeah.
You know,
don't
like,
justify methods.
Yeah. And that's another reason why I do not like the Last Jedi take of Luke Skywalker, and I will never be okay with it.
And on that note, let's go ahead and end. Thank you guys so much. Make sure you like and subscribe, and make sure to leave us a good rating. Bye, everybody.
Was that intentional?
Bye.
I gotta know.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't intentional.
Next week, episode 8, Last Jedi. Here we go.
Get out of here, Craig.